And now it's time to review the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Alright, this is my review for the Amazing Spider-Man 2 that is directed by Marc Webb. And it stars Andrew Garfield, Emma Stone, Jamie Foxx, Dane DeHaan, Sally Field, and Paul Giamatti. And this story picks up when Peter and Gwen are just about to graduate high school. If you can buy that. But that just begins, the long list of problems that this movie has, which I don't really want to get into right away. Before we get into the meat of this review, I want to start off by giving you a list of the things that I liked about it. I'm going to start off. 1, I liked his suit, his new suit. I liked Electro's design. I liked Harry Osborn and Oscorp. I liked the relationship between Peter and Gwen. And I liked the relationship between Peter and Aunt May as well. Now, to the things that I didn't like. I didn't like the pacing. I thought there could have been more character development. Overall tone was all over the place. I didn't like the backstory of his parents. And I thought the marketing for this movie was awful. So you can tell that there's a nice mix of good and bad things to talk about here. Let's start off with the acting. Andrew Garfield is a terrific Spider-Man and Peter Parker. But in this movie, he's really looking his age. And that could have been fixed with some creative script writing, but they didn't want to do that. Emma Stone and Sally Field were also pretty good. Jamie Foxx came across as a one-note cardboard character. People are right. He just is like the Riddler from Batman Forever. And Dane DeHaan, right now, he's one of my favorite actors. And he was the standout for me as Harry Osborn, not as the Goblin. And that brings us to the directing. I'm just not feeling it, man. I mean, it was well shot. I will give a full point to cinematography, despite some of it being a little too CG heavy. But the pacing was all over the place, and the tone just was not consistent for me to buy in. Like, for one moment there is a happy scene, then there's a sad scene, and then there's some exposition, and it felt all a little too choppy. And people can say that that's just artistic flair, but it didn't work for me. And to bring it back about the pacing, that leads us to the story. I really didn't care what was going on with his parents in that background story. All of that could have been handled within 1 or 2 minutes of dialogue, which I liked how that culminated in this big scene with Peter and his aunt, where she's just like, you're my boy. That was well done. But everything else, I felt like it took away from developing the bad guys. And I can't argue with people who say that they feel like the Goblin character is just tacked on at the end. If there is a true definition of something being tacked on at the end, the Goblin in this movie is it. And that was even almost trumped with what they were doing with the Rhino. I understand what they were going for. I just felt like they didn't hit that mark. My main wish was that they left more of the story of Harry Osborn and Oscorp, because that was more interesting to me. Way more than Electro. Electro had a nice scene where him and Harry come into the office. That was nice, but I wanted more of that. Even the business aspect of what was going on behind the scenes with Oscorp. I wanted to see more of Harry using his powers and his wealth, because it would have helped develop a more cohesive bad guy and plotline that is going to be used in this franchise. And I mean, overall, if you're looking for a flashy popcorn flick without much depth and substance, you are going to like this movie, because this is one of Hollywood's big blockbusters. There are some payoffs in this movie. There are some decent ideas. It just wasn't executed well. It felt like there were too many cooks in the kitchen. And the marketing of this movie, my final point, it was just awful. It's just being it's reported that they spent $180 to $190 million. Wow. I mean, I want to meet the guy, the marketing team that sold him this, because that guy can sell you magic beans. I mean, it was a complete oversaturation, and there were two big problems I had with it all. Number one, it showed most of the big action scenes in those little cut trailers that they all had. You could literally piece them all together and see like pretty much the big action scenes. Number two, it was full of dialogue and exchanges that were never in the movie. And I felt like those exchanges were critical plot points. And that is extremely offensive to people when you don't see it. It's borderline, no, it is false advertising. And I know how it could happen, but I don't want to justify bad decision making. Wow, it really sounds like I didn't like this movie. Let's rate it. For technical points, yes. For acting, yes. For cinematography, I can't give one for the directing. I will give half a point for the story. The score, Hans Zimmer, sorry man, I wasn't feeling it. Just not even one part of it. So that's a 2.5 for technical points. Now how I felt about it, I've seen it twice now. And I'm not going to go rush out and watch it again. It did have some nice little things that I enjoyed. I would say 3 out of 5 for my points. That is a 5.5 out of 10 for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Alright, if you've liked what you've seen, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe.